Getting the streaming going now, so you're welcome to start whenever you like.
Lovely, thank you. It's great to see so many people on. As you know, we will start with an overview of the last 6 months or 3 months, what has been going on in Hyperledger, and then we'll dive deeper into Cactus. I'm really excited actually about that presentation because I really want to learn more, and I'm sure you all do. So I'm not gonna keep you waiting too long. Let me just share my screen, and we'll get started. Here we go. Share screen. Okay, here we go. Sorry for that. We are really going strong right now. We've been around for 4 years now. We have 16 projects, which is pretty crazy. We have one production release in 1.0 and four in 1.0 and one in 2.0. So the code bases are really maturing right now. We have a really active community and working groups, and obviously the meetups are also growing strong. You know about Hyperledger well enough, so you know that we have a modular approach. We think of ourselves as a greenhouse, and this is our greenhouse right now. Since we started, or since the beginning of the year, we have added some projects here. So we have Hyperledger Cactus, most importantly, and then shortly before the end of the year, we also added Aries and Transact and Avalon. We have the major highlights from our projects is that there have been 3 releases published in the past quarter. So we went from Hyperledger Fabric 2.1 to 2.2 very soon. And Hyperledger Besu as well has released their version 1.5. And as a matter of fact, next week on Wednesday, we're having a webinar where they will be going through their updates and going through the technical details of what is new in Hyperledger Besu. We are really trying to get more people engaged. We have launched a Hyperledger Fabric documentation working group, or rather it was already running, but we've put a lot of effort into activating it. And now we have, I'm very pleased to announce that we have Fabric documentation in plethora of languages, Japanese, Malayan, that's a language in India, Spanish and Portuguese. We are looking really forward to getting more contributions. If you speak a language that is not mentioned here, we would be really happy if you could work with us in making the documentation more accessible. So a bit about our newest projects. Hyperledger Cactus is what we'll be hearing about today. So I'll let you listen to Peter. It is basically a blockchain integration tool that is designed to allow users to securely integrate different blockchains. We are developing our certification programs. We have now certified Hyperledger Fabric developer course, along with Hyperledger Fabric administrator and Hyperledger Sawtooth administrator courses. This helps our community to get professional certification that hopefully will help you also get better jobs and be more recognized in the world, or in the professional world. We have launched actually also courses around self-sovereign identity. So the team at Sovereign has been working, and government of British Columbia has been working and developed a really good course on in the Aries and Ursa, and then the second one on becoming a developer of Hyperledger Aries. If you are interested, please go to the training page. That's where we have all of the details on the training. We are really developing and improving our blockchain showcase. Currently, we have over 65 projects that have been submitted by people like you that have been developing, that have been working with Hyperledger code bases and developed something great. And you don't have to be a member to submit to the blockchain showcase. As a matter of fact, we are looking for non-members because we want to tell the story to the world of how Hyperledger is being used by everyone, everywhere, and it's real. Today, we hear quite often how blockchain and distributed ledgers are this gimmick and nobody is really using them for products. So we want to change that view. We want to show people that there are projects that are serious and there are projects that are just at the beginning of their maturity, but they are using distributed ledger technologies and specifically Hyperledger for good reasons. So if you have a project, just let us know. We also launched the Hyperledger Certified Service Provider, which is a very interesting program. Currently, we have 12 of global certified service providers. It helps us verify and give a stamp of approval to companies that are offering services on Hyperledger. So building, you can hire them or enter into commercial relationship with them to build based on Hyperledger frameworks. This program is targeted obviously at companies, but it does require companies to get at least 3 certified developers or administrators. So as individuals, you might want to be considering the certification. We've had some updates in terms of events. Obviously, the biggest one and the most exciting one was Hyperledger Global Forum. It was probably one of the last big conferences that happened before the global lockdown. It was very well attended given the climate and the situation. We had over 450 attendees. We had over 90 sessions, and all of them, as a matter of fact, are recorded and available on our YouTube channel, along with the presentations. So really, if you missed out, if you didn't go, no worries, you can watch all of those presentations anytime you'd like. We are really working towards creating a very inclusive and open community. We had a great talk from Swetha and Tracy about what does it mean to be an open and inclusive community. And we really want to make sure that we are hearing feedback from you when you feel in some way intimidated or not feeling like the community is really open to diverse attendance. The global meetup community has grown amazingly through lockdown and having, a very hard time attending meetings in person. Actually, our meetup system or program has really grown, because all of a sudden we are all connected, and while we can't see each other in person, we can attend meetups that are just virtual and global. I've recently gave a talk at a meetup that was organized by Hyperledger Sweden, but actually we had people from Africa and from Munich and from Finland as well. So really diverse community. We have over 2,000 attendees in total and loads of views on of the recordings on the YouTube channel. And we have a very good set of speakers as well, which is important to us because there's no point in having a meetup if you don't really have anything to discuss. So there are great companies and organizations that are able to talk about it. We are increasing regional collaboration. Hyperledger India chapter has completed a 5-part series of meetups focused on how Hyperledger is being used in APAC. You can check out the recordings and see what happened. It was very interesting. I must say, I attended some of them and they were great. Our chapter in Brazil and Latin America have launched were launched and are running regional events in Portuguese and Spanish. That's part of what we've been doing of opening the Hyperledger to other languages and recognizing that one of the big barriers in participation in a project like Hyperledger is that it is only in English. And then we have a really active community in Africa. We have run 2 virtual events about Hyperledger, and they are now planning for a monthly event series. We have more and more learning resources. As a matter of fact, there is a study circle that Hyperledger Sweden has started. You can join the study circle and participate in online training materials and go through them together, so that you feel the support of community and you feel the kind of engaged. It's not like just you learning. So we are hoping to launch similar efforts in different languages. The top 2 ones are the ones that are groups that also helped us with launching the Fabric documentation in different languages. If you are interested in creating a study circle, please let us know and we'll definitely help you. Always, if you organize a meetup, and I'm sure some of you here are meetup organizers, make sure to communicate with us. We really do want to know what is happening and we want to promote what you're doing because you are the community, you are Hyperledger. We have actually live webinars and on-demand recordings. So we've been running a very successful webinar program where we have our members giving presentation with a very active and engaged Q&A on the projects that they've been working on. The thing that I really like about webinars is that they are so interactive. I was worried when we first launched it that it would be very dry, but we also always make sure that there is enough time left for question and answers and that we are engaging with the speakers. The on-demand recordings are recordings from special interest groups and some of the meetups that we want to share with the community in case someone missed it. So especially special interest groups, if you're interested in what they've been doing, you should go to our webinars website. And a project that actually I was working on personally was trying to create how to get involved videos. We covered almost all projects and special interest groups. So you have 3 to 4 minute short videos where participants of those groups are telling you why they got involved and how to get involved, and to give you a short description of what the project is about. So it's a great way to really kind of get, within 15, maybe 20 minutes, an overview of all the projects and all of the work special interest groups, and know where you're going and know what are the opportunities that you'd have. We are also really glad to be launching a lot of case studies and sharing real global deployments. We were integrated into the Deloitte survey, where actually we didn't work with Deloitte. They just recognized that Hyperledger is a very valuable platform. And they have also stated that blockchain is integral to organizational innovation. So we do hear a lot of skepticism, but on the other hand, we are also hearing a lot of positive around distributed ledger technologies. So the case studies that we recently launched is one with Chainyard on Trust Your Supplier. That's a very interesting digital passport that allows you to build in trust into the supply chain. They are now reusing it also for looking at COVID credentials and trustworthy commute. Along with the case study, there's also a recording of the webinar that we've done with Chainyard. Another one that we have launched is with Mindtree. That's very interesting because they did two seemingly very different things, but actually they are connected. They have launched a loyalty platform and a merchant onboarding platform. So interesting to see how from two sides, the distributed ledger can help managing loyalty points, but then giving merchants an opportunity to engage their customers. Catalyst blockchain is a platform as a service that supports deployment of Hyperledger Fabric and Corda networks that has been launched with Intellect EU. And they have really worked quite hard to create a project that makes onboarding incredibly easy. We do have actually a webinar where they also walk through it. Sorry. Avanza Innovations has been working very hard on various projects. It's actually, I was very excited when I spoke with Avanza Innovations lately, seeing that they have about 20 projects that are in production in Dubai and Middle East. The one that I really like is the project that they developed for the well-being of small-scale farmers and overall the development of agricultural sector. It has been launched in Pakistan, and Collaborix platform allows farmers to have access to a digital marketplace where they can conveniently acquire relevant equipment and resources in a very seamless way. Then we have Ledger Domain. Again, we actually have a webinar that we've done with it. It's brilliant. It's very clear. So please do consider rewatching it if you haven't. This is around supply chain in pharmaceutical industry and how can we ensure that the delivery of drugs or pharmaceuticals is trustworthy. Then there's the other Mindtree loyalty program. That's something that I discussed already. And yeah, I think with that, I will pass over to you, Peter, so that we can hear more about Cactus, because I think that's the more important thing. Unless there are any questions for me, I'm happy to take questions. Okay, I see no raised hands or unmuted microphones. So yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Martin. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Great, just a second. Okay, hello everyone. I'm Peter Shomodjivari. I work for Accenture as an architect, and I'm one of the maintainers of the Cactus project. It's a little early here in San Francisco, so if I accidentally call Cactus BIF, that's because it used to be called Blockchain Integration Framework back when it was just a labs project. And then a little safe harbor. It is currently in incubation status, so we do not yet have a 1.0 release, and therefore it is not yet recommended at the moment that you actually start a project with it where you have to depend on stable software. So just with that out of the way, I can continue. So what is it? It is, hopefully it will be a pluggable enterprise-grade framework to transact on multiple distributed ledgers without inventing yet another competing blockchain. The last part is important. We do not want a ledger of ledgers sort of blockchain. So we do not intend on having this core functionality where we basically store blocks of data and then have some sort of consensus achieved on that as part of Cactus. We really just want to make sure that the existing ledgers that are out there can work with each other in the best possible way. With known limitations, of course, but I'll get into that later. And then you could ask why. It's a big part of it is definitely the fragmentation. There's a lot of innovation in the blockchain space right now, which is great. But then a large amount of innovation has this sort of negative side effect where everything happens so fast that it's very difficult to keep up, and it's difficult to not have this hype fatigue. When one day you get excited about some new technology, but by next week it's basically obsolete, and then you have to get excited again and learn everything, or not everything, but a lot of things again. So we are trying to bridge that gap and make sure that there's some sort of stability in the chaos, and hopefully push it through that limit where mainstream adoption, like true mainstream adoption, becomes a thing, especially for businesses. And if you think fragmentation is not that bad, well, the thing is, if you're a perfectionist and you start your distributed application or other blockchain project with the premise that you just want this to work with every other blockchain out there because that's like the bare minimum how it should be, then you are looking at doing thousands and thousands of different integrations to different ledgers. And so that's part of it why fragmentation is bad. It's not as bad as exponential growth, but it is quadratically growing the number of integrations with the number of ledgers. So for 100 ledgers, you need 5,000 different integrations, and that's pretty impossible, especially if you don't have a framework to help you with that. And I wanted to show this again, and I wanted to emphasize that even though we are in the tools category, one could also make arguments why we are more of a library and vice versa. The truth is that it really depends on who you are, what is your role in an organization, and how do you end up using Cactus. Because if you're the one deploying it and operating it, then you will think of it much more as a tool to connect different ledgers. But if you are a higher level, like an application developer, then to you, it will probably feel more like a library, but obviously there's a lot of magic happening in the background that makes that sort of library work. So I just wanted to clarify that, make sure that I mentioned it. And then we have a generic use case. This is ridiculously oversimplified for a reason. I will get into more details, but I just wanted to show this, that in the end, this is what it always boils down to. You have more than one ledgers, it can be 2 or 10. And then you have a separate Cactus deployment, and the users or the developers, however you want to think about it, they should be able to interact with those ledgers in an as uniform as possible way through Cactus. And that's where we would prefer to add value. The other thing that I probably should have put on this diagram is little smart contracts on the ledger, because a lot of the use cases, or almost all of them, that we envisioned so far, they almost always involve a smart contract being deployed on the target ledgers to facilitate some sort of operation. For example, the use case we have with federated validation, where you can export some data from ledger A to ledger B and then have actual cryptographic proof obtained from Cactus, which obtained it from ledger A's smart contract, that the data is present on ledger A and it is indeed in the form that ledger B has it. Yes. So design principles. Plugin architecture is one of the big ones. And there, what we really want to achieve is the flexibility and the future proofing. I'll get into much more details there. The main point is that we want to be able to integrate with as many ledgers as possible, and we don't want to limit ourselves to plugins that we implemented. We want everyone else to also implement plugins. Secure by default, very important. Uh, it's one of the boring ones because nobody likes to deal with securing their application, but we make it a point to have the software come shipped with the security defaults that will not cause any heartbreak, hopefully, to anyone, so that it doesn't, come deployed with a password that's admin and the username is also admin, stuff like that. And then we want it to be toll free. We do not want any kind of functionality baked in there that somehow ends up charging people transaction fees or anything else. We do not intend on issuing our own tokens or have an ICO. We don't really want to do any of that. Low impact deployment. What we mean there is that if you already have a ledger that you operate, then you should be able to deploy that and not worry about having to install additional dependencies that are necessitated by Cactus itself. An example of that would be, an example of that would be if you are running a Fabric ledger and we have a Fabric connector plugin for that ledger, then you shouldn't need to deploy additional software to be able to use the Cactus API and deploy chain code contracts on it. This is much harder said, or much harder done than said, but we are working on things like this to make sure that that design principle is really actually implemented. And a few additional ones. Wide support, it just means we want to support as many ledgers as possible. Instead of just imposing restrictions on what can be done, we want to be really flexible so that there should be a 90 plus or 99% plus chance that you can write an integration with Cactus, regardless of how new or different that ledger is. Because at the heart of it, a distributed ledger is just a database with a lot of extra bells and whistles, but in our abstraction, we're trying to just treat it as a read-write data store that is able to have cryptographic proofs of the data that's in there, and also the smart contract support, which is executing code. For use cases where it involves currency, we of course want to prevent double spending, but this is where I have to say that nothing is a magic bullet, and neither is Cactus. So if you have a use case where um, you are transacting with proof of work ledgers that can fork and fork in a way that's by definition without control, then you do have to treat that as a possibility that the distributed transaction that you ran across ledgers will be broken in some shape or form, because guess what? The POW ledger forked, and maybe your funds disappeared, or maybe you got the funds twice, or whatever else happened. Preserving ledger features. This means that if ledger A and ledger B are integrated with Cactus for some sort of business use case, then we would really love to have as many of the additional cool ledger features supported through Cactus as if you were using those ledgers directly with whatever SDK or API that they provide. One of the examples there is privacy features. So if you have two ledgers that both support private transactions, then obviously what we would want to give you through the Cactus APIs is the same thing. We do not want to limit your ability to use those private transactions. This is a little sketch of the architecture. And as you can see, everything's about plugins. So I will talk a lot about that. I will continue to do so. The business logic plugin is sort of like a generic placeholder for whatever code it is that you will want to operate as your use case to add value. And the rest of it is what you could call the kernel, the core of Cactus that is actually delivered by the maintainers. The routing interface is something that we're still designing. It's intended to make it as seamless as possible to send your API requests to a specific DNS host on the internet, which is the Cactus deployment, and still hit the particular plugin that you are looking to work with. Some implementation details about the project, much lower level. We write the code in TypeScript, we bundle it with Webpack. And there's a bunch of packages. I think it's already above 10. Some of them are plugins, some of them are the core API definitions. We have an API server, we have a common package, which is designed to be cross-platform / universal. So the same package can be installed in a Node.js or a browser environment. And we put a lot of effort into test automation because we will not be able to scale up manual testing, especially not if there's a bunch of plugins implemented by the community, which we will hope happen. If you look to contribute a plugin, then there will be stringent requirements on test automation and test coverage, because we have to make sure that at least the tests pass. So more about the plugin architecture. The point there is that nobody knows the future. So there could be vastly different new designs in the future's ledgers. So we're not trying to prescribe some opinionated framework where we tell you how everything should be and this is how blockchain should be. Instead, what we believe in is that we can prepare for the unknown, different types of ledgers that we will need to support with software that bends, not breaks, when the technological shift occurs. We have plugins in design so far for identity, consortium management, ledger connectors, storage. And I'm personally working on the consortium plugins first iteration right now. By consortium, we just mean uh, a set of actors, most likely businesses, but technically any kind of person or entity. So a consortium is a set of actors who have some sort of common interest. Maybe they all operate their own ledgers and they want some sort of integration or interoperability uh, between those ledgers. So then they could come together, form a consortium, um, deploy Cactus, and satisfy that use case that depends on all of their ledgers being accessible through a single application. And the plugins are loaded at runtime, which is, it may seem obvious, but it is a very important detail that you do not have to bundle everything together. You can actually just configure in a configuration file or in a command line argument what plugins you want loaded, and then you can restart Cactus and it will pick up the plugins. And regarding the plugin architecture specifically from the open source software angle, plugin projects can live outside of the main Cactus repo. They can be anywhere as long as you can install them as an npm package to a Node.js project. You can use them, because to the bare minimum to import a plugin and have Cactus use it is basically to have it implement a specific interface and to have the npm package name or the Node.js package name provided to Cactus that it will import. We would like to, this is a very, very forward-looking statement sort of thing, but we would love to have language agnostic plugin development as well. So that would mean that even though Cactus is running in Node.js, you could write your plugin in your favorite language and interact with Cactus through the localhost network interface. And some good ideas we've seen elsewhere implementing these is the Go plugin project, which uses this exact same mechanism. So if anyone asks me what about supporting X, Y, or Z, my thought process in answering the question will always be the same, and it's exactly laid out here. If a plugin already supports it, then I'll just say, well, just use the plugin. And if the plugin doesn't exist yet, then I will ask, well, is this something that we support on the core level as a pluggable aspect of the software? And if the answer is yes, then I can point you to some resources where it is laid out how to implement a plugin interface and then put the actual code behind that interface, package it up as an npm package, and you're ready to go. You can use the plugin. You never have to talk to any of the maintainers to get any sort of permission or any of that. And the edge case is, which hopefully will happen very rarely, but if it's not even pluggable, so if this is something embedded in the core, then we can discuss it. And if we say, yeah, this is a good idea, then you can submit a pull request to Cactus to have that aspect of the core pulled out into a plugin. And then once that's merged and released, then you can upgrade your Cactus and then go back to the step where you're just implementing the specific plugin that you need. an example of a plugin. This is very, very simplistic, way too simplistic, but I wanted to make sure that the point gets across that what is a plugin interface. So for example, this is how easy it gets. If you want a key value storage plugin, which your Cactus node can use locally, for example. The way you could use a storage plugin like that is to implement some sort of functionality where your application keeps track of pending transactions or some other really basic necessary feature that you will most definitely need if you have any kind of business application where you have to keep track of what's happening. And I think I already mentioned this, preserving the ledger features. Yes, I already said this, so I'll just skip this one. The transaction protocol, this is still under design. But the point is that we want to have this handshake phase where both participants of the transaction first have to agree on what is going to happen, how this cross ledger transaction is going to be played out. And that's the important part about that, so that nothing happens that you don't want to or didn't anticipate to happen, and avoid surprises like, oh, I didn't know that Bitcoin could fork. So this is designed to prevent that from happening without you explicitly knowing in advance that it could happen. Of course, if you knew that it could happen and you chose to go along with it anyway, then that's the best we can do. We definitely want to support batch transactions where applicable for higher throughput use cases where explicit peer interaction is not required. For example, if you have a business use case where you want to move large chunks of data from one ledger to another, and both accounts or wallets or whatever identity you have, you own both of those on both ledgers, then you might just want to get it done as fast as possible instead of having to go through the transaction proposal phase for each one individually. Regarding performance and scalability, the bottleneck should always be the ledger, not Cactus. So we worked really hard on designing Cactus with horizontal scalability in mind. The big challenge there is that you cannot really have any sort of state, or almost any. I mean, we will end up having some, but we try to keep that to the minimum because that's what always bogs software down when it has to store a certain amount of state. So we intend to be stateless wherever possible. And that actually ties back to what I said about us not wanting to store blocks of data and be responsible for the consensus and all that. This is a more complicated version of a use case that I wanted to show. This is in our white paper. And I'm not going to explain it in great detail. It's really just to show that we do have details. I promised them in the beginning on that very oversimplified slide. And you should definitely check out the white paper that we have on GitHub within the GitHub repo, because there's lots of this. So if you want to seriously deep dive on the hands-on details, then we have that. And that's all I'm gonna say about this. So regarding federated validation, this is the this is the initial use case that gave birth originally internally to the idea of Cactus within Accenture, because a part of it was developed internally before it was donated to Hyperledger or the Linux Foundation. So the point there is that you can verify, you can give a verification to one ledger that a certain state is on the other ledger for a specific block or a piece of data. And we want it to be fail-stop tolerant. So if one node goes down or if a member of your consensus goes down, then it shouldn't stop working. It should just handle it. The network services that involve this, or this involves, is really to add public keys to the smart contracts, which is mentioned as managed trusted foreign validators, and verify the payloads against the state of the ledger they are connected to, and handle export requests, meaning your application wants a piece of data moved legibly from ledger A to ledger B. A little bit of an architecture diagram that shows the layers, and it shows that we are on top of the actual DLT platforms and the ledger software and the SDKs. So there's nothing that you need to sort of insert within the ledger. There's no need for you to customize your own ledger just to be able to make it work with Cactus. That's kind of the takeaway point here. And the way it works under the hood, this is a bit redundant, but I wanted to explain it doubly, that there's on-chain logic and off-chain logic. And off-chain logic means it is a server that runs Cactus with its REST API. That's where requests come in from a client application. And the on-chain logic is, as it is right now, most of the time, is a smart contract that we deployed on the ledgers that we support. And really what the off-chain logic does is invoke the on-chain logic to work its magic and deliver the specific use case that you wish it to do. We do have a roadmap, but this is heavily subject to change. We want to finalize the 1.0 design and the technical architecture. We do not yet have a 1.0 release or a stable version of it. I wanted to reiterate that. And regarding identity, we want to support all the cool solutions out there and standards. I am personally a big fan of the Sovereign Foundation. And I also have been working on adding some sort of OpenID Connect support for identities. But that's also still work in progress. If you want the absolute hardcore details, there is a pull request open with it and the project, so feel free to check that out as well. Implementing plugins with different languages, mentioned that. Consortium management, I talked about that. And we definitely want some sort of first public test deployment that would achieve some sort of dummy hello world use case, but out there in the public so that everyone can give it a test and see it in action. And I have some links here for our community. You can always find us on the Rocket Chat channel for Cactus. And also, if you have any sort of questions, feel free to open them on GitHub as an issue. And you can find out more about our regular weekly calls on the wiki page, which is the bottom link. And that's it from me. Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Peter. That was really, really interesting. We have a question, or actually two questions, one and a half, from Clive. Is Cactus ecosystem like Android, iPhone with plugins like apps? For instance, on security, is there a plugin approval process for things like apps? That would be similar to apps, I guess that was the question.
A plugin approval process. Well, if you are looking to contribute the plugin to the main repository, then it will be scrutinized by all the maintainers heavily. So that is sort of an approval process. But you can also develop your own plugins, and nobody stops you from publishing those in the wide open internet, and nobody will stop people from using it. So there isn't at the moment a sort of a safeguard around this, except maybe a verbal recommendation that if you operate Cactus, then you should not install plugins without reviewing the source code. And if someone is trying to obfuscate the source code, then that's obviously a red flag. But yeah, I think that's a great point. That's something we should look into, because this could be a problem, just like it is a huge problem with the app stores, the mainstream app stores, where a big percentage of the apps out there are basically just malware.
Thank you. That was a very good answer, I guess. So does anybody else have any questions? I mean, oh, Andre, I see that you have your hand raised. So I will, if you can unmute yourself, please go ahead.
Yes, hello again. My name is Andrei, and my question was, does Cactus work in passive mode? For example, is it able to listen events on blockchain, for example, Fabric or Kezu, and react to them, or is it only for active calls?
There is an API proposal out there right now in the examples directory of ours, where it is proposed that we should have an event-driven way of listening to changes in the ledger state, so that you as an end user slash developer, you can subscribe to, let's say, a certain block or a certain transaction being completed on one or both of the ledgers or all of them. And then you get notified, you get sort of a push down information that, hey, this just finished or this just happened. And that actually takes me to another feature proposal about blockchain migration and streaming replication, which was proposed by one of our contributors, Rafael. So he also is looking into this, and he has contributed a dedicated section just about this in the white paper.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to hear. And I also had another question. Is it a sane way to organize different consortium networks so Cactus, different Cactus instances would interact with each other?
Sorry, I'm not sure I got the first part.
I mean, if we have a few different networks of participants that do not intersect with each other, but they have different instances of Cactus that want to connect to each other. For example, if it would be something like an oracle that tells, I don't know, exchange rates for different currencies, and one organization would want to interact with another organization's instance. Is this something to consider, or all interactions are only within blockchains?
Oh, I see. So personally, I consider this a feature that we should support, but I say me personally because we are still designing the way this routing interface works. But what I can tell you right now is that in the current version of the code, you can instantiate an API client with any uh, network host. So in theory, if you want an application that doesn't just work with one Cactus deployment, but also another, you could do that. And the experience in the code should be largely the same. You just have to be aware of the differences of those two Cactus deployments. For example, one of the deployments will have a Ledger connector plugin for Fabric, but the other one will be for Basic. So you have to take care of that in your code. But other than that, it should just work. That's my personal vision on this.
Thank you for your answer.
No problem.
It's quite insightful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. One more thing. We have a question from Luciano Augusto. Does Cactus support public blockchains such as Ethereum?
We do plan on supporting Ethereum. Just because something is proof of work, it doesn't mean that we cannot integrate with it. It's just that I will work extra hard on telling everybody and making sure that if you're integrating with a proof of work ledger, then certain things can happen that are outside of your control. Of course, Ethereum is moving on to proof of stake with 2.0, which is I'm probably oversimplifying it, but that's just another reason why we should definitely support Ethereum, like vanilla core Ethereum, not just the derivatives like Quorum or Basic.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes total sense. So I think that well, do people have more questions? We have still some time if you'd like to, grill me or Peter on any topics. We're here for you, really. So I'll, give you a minute to think if you have any questions, and if you don't, then we can always just wrap up. I have a question for you, Peter, actually. How long have you, oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, this is Andrew Wood speaking here. Listen to this very interesting presentation. Is it true then that the Cactus provides some functionality equivalent to the two-phase commit, where you've got federated databases allowing you to, for example, have two blockchains with cryptocurrencies on them, and allowing you to guarantee that when you destroy a some units of cryptocurrency on one blockchain, you can create units on the other blockchain, and does it then guarantee that destruction and creation of new units happens in sync?
Yes.
So it either goes forward or it rolls back, but it could never be stuck halfway.
Yes, but there's a fine print there, which is that you can only guarantee this if you are transacting with ledgers where both of those ledgers are under your control, in the sense that you can actually do a rollback, right? Because you cannot roll back a proof of work ledger. But the two-phase commit, I really like that you mentioned that, because that's exactly the way I'm thinking about it. To keep it simple in my own mental model, I really like to just assume that I'm really just dealing with two good old relational SQL databases that have pieces of data, and I'm trying to make sure that everything is working as it should.
Okay, so if it was two Hyperledger Fabric blockchains or two Corda blockchains, for example, then you would be able to do this.
Yes, because those blockchains were designed with business use cases in mind, and usually business use cases need this sort of accountability, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And because of that, we should be able to build a solution on top of that that implements exactly what you described.
Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Marta?
Yep, I was just waiting, giving people a moment, but I think we are done here. This was amazing. As Clive says, it's a good presentation and good answers. I would say it's great presentation and great answers. I am really appreciative because I've had so many people asking about Cactus and learning more about it. So it will be awesome to also be able to point people at the recording of this presentation. We are actually doing double thing on Zoom and live streaming on YouTube. So we are getting even more audience here. So Peter, thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. Stay tuned for our next meetup, and I hope you have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.